thank you for being here, everyone, today. So I spend a lot of time as a volunteer guide at the Minneapolis Institute of Arts. And I don't know if you've been there, but it's a wonderful museum. And let's see. And so there's some great exhibits. There's a Van Gogh exhibit that's going to open next week. And there's also a great exhibit on Japanese textiles that'll open next week. So hope you can get there. Oops. But one of my favorite pieces there is a sculpture by a renowned Japanese contemporary ceramist named Takahiro Kondo. And he was born into a family of ceramists who are famous for doing these beautiful blue and white porcelain. But after the horrific tsunami and nuclear disaster at Fukushima in March of 2011, Kondo felt a need to respond with his art. And so he created a series of porcelain sculptures like this, made from a cast of his own body. And he calls this series Reduction. His art really reflects his Buddhist roots, and this represents the posture of a Buddha seated in a meditative pose. Kondo's signature silver mist glaze is intended to be a reference to the radioactivity that was released and that may well drench the people of Japan. So the title of Reduction suggests the dire results of the disaster, the possible diminishment of an entire race, and calls attention to the causes and consequences for all of Japan. This image is reminiscent of Gautama Buddha in his early ascetic phase. And as you look closely at the image, it appears as tears are streaming down his face, perhaps in sorrow for the inhumanity of mankind. And universally, this poignant and solemn image could represent all the sadness and despair in the world today. Not only fears of more nuclear disasters, but of the global climate crisis and the ongoing war in the Ukraine and the growing threat of nuclear weapons being built in other countries. And also the despair over gun violence taking place right here in our own country with the recent murders in Buffalo, Uvalde, Oklahoma, and other places. And of all the other social issues of inequity and discrimination, and even the despair of our own personal struggles and losses we are faced with in our individual lives. It all feels so very overwhelming at times. Unimaginable pain and suffering in the world. What can we do? But amidst these challenges to our everyday life, we can't give up hope. During Shinran's time, during the 12th century, life was not that much different than today. Japan was going through a time of transition and upheaval. There were wars, earthquakes, fire, famine, epidemics, political transition. It all sounds pretty much the same, doesn't it? And even Shinran, he suffered tremendous personal loss, was exiled unfairly, and stripped of his monk's robes. But Shinran found words of encouragement to help others get through difficult times. And he explained to us the workings of Amida Buddha and reciting the Nembutsu. Amida Buddha, the symbol of infinite wisdom and immeasurable compassion. Amida comes from the Sanskrit word mita, to measure, and by adding an A means immeasurable or infinite. Combining Amida with Tayas, meaning life, and with Amida Dabu, meaning light. Amida Buddha means Buddha of immeasurable light and life, a symbol of infinite wisdom and immeasurable compassion. Amida is a personification of the working of life in our everyday reality. This formless, inconceivable, wordless, colorless realm of reality as is. And in Shinran's vast writings, he described Amida in many ways. And among the ways he described Amida were immeasurable light, true and real light, boundless light, enlightenment of non-description, unhindered light, beyond conception, unequaled light, ultimate shelter, light that surpasses the sun and moon, ocean light, great mind, light and joy, light of wisdom, and inconceivable light. Those are just some of them. And he expressed himself in poems like here, a reading from Hymns of the Pure Land. The light of wisdom exceeds all measure, and every finite living being receives the illumination that is like the dawn. So take refuge in Amida, the true and real light. Amida Buddha comes alive in each of us, awakened by the saying of Namo Amida Butsu, the name that calls. The saying of which reminds us of the fundamental truth that gratefully acknowledges this gift of life. And we respond to that call. It calls to us and we respond. The Buddha's name, Amida Buddha, is voiced Namo Amida Butsu, or the Nembutsu. The Nembutsu literally means to be mindful of the Buddha. And while it can be more complex in how I'm explaining this, the meaning can be like saying thank you. It's a voicing of gratitude. And we can all understand the words thank you. We don't even have to explain it. And like that, saying the Nembutsu can bring the Dharma into our ordinary lives by saying thank you. And hearing Namo Amida Butsu, we express our gratitude for all that we are receiving. As Reverend Akahoshi puts it, Shin Buddhism is about appreciating what I have to balance the desire for what I lack. It is shifting from please to thank you, changing our view of a life based on our desires of please to voicing gratitude in the words of thank you, or Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu is a response to receiving, not achieving. And for Shin Buddhists, we say there is no other practice other than saying Nembutsu. We don't sit on a cushion and meditate for long periods of time. We don't have rules we are commanded to follow. But we do practice great compassion through the saying of the Nembutsu. And we can expand that practice to include social engagement in response to all of these social issues we're faced with today that are based on the ideals of compassion, equality, and interdependence. And while this motivation should not be of the self-powered attitude of desiring to be a good person or doing a good deed, it should be an act rooted in gratitude and concern for others, even though it might be difficult to accomplish, as we participate in the ongoing compassionate activity we call Amida. And so we can practice the six paramitas. You know, we are often reminded of that in the spring and fall Ohigan. the practice of giving, selfless giving, giving generously, helping through our mind and heart. We can practice through our conduct, thoughtful consideration, through speech, kind words, smiles, kind eyes. We can practice patience, endurance, tolerance, perseverance, and most of all, forbearance toward hatred and not reacting to hatred. For as we know from the Dhammapada, the words of the Buddha, hatred is not overcome by hatred. Hatred is only overcome by love. This is an eternal truth. And we can put forth our best effort, use our strength, heroic strength, not to give up. And that might mean voting and supporting those who align with our values. And also the final paramitas of meditation and wisdom. And so Shinran spoke to us about all of this, about the importance of living in this present world and engaging in activities to benefit others. Another way we can practice is by understanding the 4 marks of existence. And as this is cleverly put together by Dr. Ken Tanaka, reminds us to think big, don't think small. We're in a Buddhist view. We know that life is a bumpy road. We will all go through difficult times, birth, old age, sickness, and death. We understand that all life is interdependent. We all understand that life is impermanent. And we try to think that life can be great. But sometimes it's hard. Our human instinctual view is that life should always be a smooth road. Sometimes we wonder, why is this happening to me? And sometimes we think that life should always be mine. Our greed and selfishness comes to the front. And sometimes we have difficulty with change and think that life should always be the same and have an attitude that life is lousy. But in a Buddhist view, we need to remind ourselves to think big and don't think small. And we can practice by living the words of the golden chain that we just read. By understanding our interconnectedness and taking responsibility for our interactions with others, especially for those who are weaker than ourselves. We can think kind words, kind thoughts, do good deeds. We can continue to reach out in kindness to one another and spread messages of peace and humanity for the world. These are the ways we can actualize the teachings in our daily life. We are sheltered in this boundless light of Amita's compassion and wisdom. So may we work together to reduce suffering and speak out against events in society that conflicts with the Buddhist spirit of compassion, equality, and oneness. Please join me in Gassho. The compassionate mind is never exhausted. The wisdom is infinite. Through the practice of compassion and wisdom together, the nectar of Dharma spreads everywhere. Namo Buddhaya. Namo Buddhaya. Namo Buddhaya. Namo Buddhaya.